Hello everybody, welcome to this new video where I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks that will make learning English or any other language that you are trying to learn a lot easier, faster, and much more effective. The techniques that I'm going to share with you today are actually based on what we know, scientifically speaking, about how children learn their mother tongues. Mother tongues basically are the first language that you learn when you are a little kid. If you have ever thought or remembered how you learned your first language, you will remember that you didn't need to memorize vocabulary or learn the grammar rules or even make vocabulary lists. You didn't need to do any of that. You simply were playing there, listening to what your parents or your family was saying and internalizing language very, very easily, effortlessly, and very automatically. And this is what we will try to do through the three main tricks that I'm going to share with you today. But before we start, make sure to like this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing that. In the future, we are going to share a lot more videos like this one. So the first thing that I want to start with is how learning language can sometimes be a very frustrating experience. You learn vocabulary, but later on, you forget it very easily. You try to remember, for example, the vocabulary that you learned just the other day, and it's absolutely gone. A very common experience that a lot of people face when they are learning English or any other language again is that they tend to understand very well, but when they try to use the language themselves, they find themselves stuttering and not finding the right terms or forgetting grammatical rules, etc., etc. So these are very common experiences actually. So the techniques that I'm going to share with you today will help you overcome some of these problems. First technique that I'm going to share with you today is actually immerse yourself in the language, or in other words, expose yourself to the language you are trying to learn. If that language is English, make sure to expose yourself to as much English content as possible. For example, try watching movies, listening to songs in English, maybe listening to podcasts or the radio in English, etc., etc. But one question that a lot of you can ask me now is, well, I'm still a beginner. How can I understand the language? How can I understand the movie? Well, first, I didn't say that you cannot watch the movie without subtitles. You can still use the subtitles. If you are listening to music, you can still look up the lyrics of that song that you are listening to. But the advantage of this technique is that you are learning the language, you are learning the vocabulary in a context that are actually entertaining. Movies are entertaining, so you are not really focusing on the language, you are enjoying the movie, but at the same time, your brain is internalizing some vocabulary so much in the same way that little kids are playing, are enjoying their day, are having some fun, but still internalizing what adult people are telling them. Another reason why this technique is very beneficial is that it actually helps you learn more than just vocabulary. It helps you pay attention to how grammar is used in real context. It helps you listen to real or authentic intonation, the real way that the native speakers of the language you are trying to learn speak. It will help you, for example, in the case of English, learn stress patterns, which is a very, very important thing in English. So this is the first step, which is related to internalizing the language, internalizing the vocabulary. The second technique that I want to share with you, which is related to not internalizing but using the language, using the content that you are internalizing, is thinking to yourself in English. What does that mean? Of course, when we are going about our day, when we are doing whatever, we tend to think to ourselves mainly in our mother tongue. So one very effective technique that you can do is to think to yourself in English. Of course, again, you might object, well, I don't have much vocabulary to think to myself in English. And my answer is very simple. When you are thinking to yourself in English, take note of words that you didn't find in your vocabulary. So for example, imagine you are going in the supermarket and you saw a very interesting item. You can think to yourself, wow, this item, for example, this tomato, this shampoo is very nice, is very something. So you can try to just use an example or an adjective to describe it. If you can't find the adjective, of course you can still use Google or use a dictionary and look it up. But the advantage of this technique is that now you needed the vocabulary item, you needed it. That means it will be much likelier or much more likely that you will remember it this time because you needed it in a real life context. All right? The final or the last piece of advice that I have for you that will make you boost your English vocabulary and at the same time learn English faster and especially learn speaking is talking to yourself in front of a camera at the end of the day. Most of people or a lot of people like to write on their diary, on their journals at the end of the day. They like to reflect on their day. They like to think how their day went, what did they do, what they didn't do, etc, etc. So you can try to do this in English, and instead of writing it, you can try to use a video or you can try to record the video like I'm doing right now. Just sit in front of the camera, say whatever you want to say about your day, maybe just like do a little summary about your day, and again you will find yourself stuck with certain words. Here again you can use the dictionary, look the word up, but again you will be more likely to remember the word here because you used it in context, you really needed it. Okay, so very quickly I will review with you the 3 techniques, the 3 tips that I shared with you today. The first tip: make sure to expose yourself to English as much as possible through music, podcasts, radio, even books, articles, whatever you can lay your hands on. The second tip is try to think to yourself in English. And finally, at the end of your day, try to make a little summary of your day using English or using a video or an audio application. That was it for today's video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. I hope it will be handy to you. So make sure to subscribe again. Make sure to like this video if you have found these pieces of advice effective or useful for you. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.